Welcome to Season 4 of the Knack for Business podcast.
Question for the audience. Are you struggling to help young people find purpose, confidence, and direction in a noisy world? That's what Megan will be diving into how cultivating literacy, creativity, self expression can unlock potential in both youth and entrepreneurs. She'll share how her global network through the Y Club and Paradox Rocks communications helps others turn passion into impact. If you care about developing purpose driven leaders for the future, connect with Megan and discover how her approach can help you empower the next generation. So, let's talk about Megan. Megan Deers is from the Y Club NPC, NPC standing for non for profit company. She's a dynamic entrepreneur, global literacy advocate, and the visionary behind the Y Club and Paradox Rocks Communications. With roots in heavy duty tech sales, marketing, and management, she channels her business acumen into empowering others to discover purpose through their work. As the founder and executive director of the Y Collab Youth Academy, Megan leads initiatives that nurture young minds and inspire a lifelong love of learning. Through writing, speaking, and mentorship, she helps entrepreneurs and youth alike explore their passions, build confidence, and create meaningful impact across the world. Megan, absolute pleasure to have you here today. It's great to see the smile, and for those on the audio, you have to take my word for it.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Wayne, for inviting me into your space. And I'm looking forward to chatting today.
Do you have a favorite quote or saying, ma'am?
I do. I have two. One that's been coming a very long time with me, and the first one being stand for something or you'll fall for anything. That's been a guiding principle in my life for a while. And then one of my more recent ones, and also one of my hashtags for the Paradox Rock space, is passion changes everything. So those are the two that guide me every day.
So, global literacy and youth empowerment, that's kind of it's a great objective, great thing to focus on. What led you down that path? What brought you to that door?
Wow, Bernie. So I think it starts very much with having parents who are avid readers, always had us with our noses in books and completely turned us into word nerds. So the love for the language has always been there. The love for reading has always been there. But also, for me, reading was a big part of my escape for a not so great childhood at times, you know. So I would be the one who grabbed the book and my music and would sit in a corner and just get lost in that. And so for me, I feel that is one way in which I can teach our kids today. You know, there's opportunity in reading, there is knowledge in reading, there's escape in reading, there's fun and exploration in reading, there's curiosity in reading. And all of those things combined into that space pretty much gives them everything they need to move forward in life, if you think about it. So for me, always being in that space myself, I just thought one of the best ways that I can possibly contribute. I have a love for young children and for youth, and for helping and teaching others, helping them develop. So it was a natural step for me, I think, pretty much going to the space where I'm working with the young children, the young minds, but also being able to hold on to my love for literacy and reading and being able to transfer that love across to them.
Wayne, over to you, sir. Dance with me.
Wow. Sure, I will be happy to. We are now in a very screen-laced society, and there's been an anti-reading push, which I think is quite tragic, and I think there's some materials now that show it was. Tell me about cultivating reading in a screen environment.
Thank you, Wayne. Great question. So there's going to always be this push and pull between, you know, on-screen reading, reading hardcover printed books, etc. And you know what? A real reader will firstly tell you that there's nothing that feels and smells like a printed book, right? That's one thing that I always push for, and I make sure that our kids have a printed book in hand. I'm not a fan of screens because, you know, all of us work online. The three of us, we know the story, we work online. So to be able to escape the screen is a great idea. And so one of the things that the Y Collab is really trying to focus on is getting our kids into more traditional ways of reading, although we realize that we have to keep up with technology on some level. We want to try and discourage them from doing everything on screen. So yes, spend your time on screen if that's what your entertainment space is, but how about just putting the screen down and then moving on to a copy book for some reading time, right? So for us, it's about recognizing that technology is changing. Our kids need to be upgrading with technology as things move along in the world. But at the same time, there are different approaches to reading. And I think from our side at the Y Collab, we prefer doing things the traditional way so that the tradition, the culture of actually sitting down in a cozy corner with a cup of tea and a book in your hand becomes something that they think about rather than only on a screen and, you know, getting everything they think they need from the screen. So we hopefully will be able to hold them in that space for a while longer.
When you're talking about reading, are you talking about reading as in like, here's my calculus math book, or are you talking about fantasy novels like sci-fi? Is there a mix of what's going on? Because to read is one thing. If you're doing it for enjoyment, even if you're reading Lord of the Rings, right? It's a journey. Yet you
Right.
can also be reading a manual how to repair your car.
Absolutely. Fully agree with you there, Bernie. Thank you for throwing that into the mix. And I think the the material, I always say to the parents of my learners, I don't care what they read, as long as they're reading every day, first and foremost. Because we need to get them back into the space where they're actually reading daily. Bottom line. Our statistics are shocking at the moment in terms of the number of children on grade 4 level, for example, who can read with comprehension, right? With understanding. So I think the first port of call is really to get them to read. And I have had students come through my tuition space, which has been running for about 3 years now, where the mom says to me, I'm enrolling my child because all they want to do is listen to music. So guess what? I love music too. So let's get some music lyrics together. We can write some music lyrics because through that you can learn to spell. You can learn to build sentences. You can learn to love reading as much as if you were reading Game of Thrones, for instance. So I think the big point to make here is that we try and meet each child where they are. And so if your interest lies in sci-fi, that's where we'll go for the reading. Bottom line, let's get them reading first and we'll smooth the process out as we go ahead.
What are the schools that you're in person with this process?
Okay, so at the moment, we are not in person at any schools in Cape Town yet. So for the longest period now, I think about 3 years that we've been operating in that space, doing we're doing what we do as a tuition space. So group tuition, online tuition, in-person tuition. Everything we do is meant to support the current academic process that our kids are going through, right? Because we are not wanting to, needing to, or, well, yes, needing to. We need to change a few things, but we are not there to take over the education system per se. We are there, however, to try and fill the gaps that we are finding that are occurring because of the certain circumstances or in the education system itself. So for the moment, we are focusing on areas where the learners are really having specific challenges and going in with that. But by next year, we will be entering the schooling system, yes, because we feel that not only do our children, our learners need the support, but the parents need the support. So there will be a parental portal opened where they can access our information, they can access support tips and hints around how they support the children through this developmental process that we put them through, both literacy and key life skills, of course. And we are hoping to be able to start actually having a set up classroom space at some of the schools in our local area, which then means that we are literally on call and in their space while they are learning. So that's the aim.
I find that things that are inculcated strongly as a very young youth or as a youth, at first it feels very natural. And then specifically with men, perhaps they push back. Well, I don't need no reading. And what brought you back from the pushback where you were making your own decisions? And was that a real process? Where you sort of resisted what you had been taught is this mine? When did you sort of come back to where you were? And was there a process?
Oh, definitely a process, Wayne. Definitely a process. Thank you for that question. Great question. Yes, there generally is some pushback. And especially, if our kids are sitting on their screen for 10 hours a day and suddenly we take it away for 2 hours, definitely going to be pushback. However, the transition and the process that we try and implement there needs to be engaging. It needs to be fun. And that's one of the core focus areas we have is actually just not taking you from one school environment into the next school environment, right? We're trying to actually incite the curiosity and create the enjoyment and excitement that goes around learning in general. So everything that we do, all our programs are built around that. And the process, I feel, is a natural one. The pushback is natural. And we have to tap the right buttons with it. Each individual, we're going to have to tap different buttons to see what's going to pull you in, what's going to draw you into the program. And that's what we do and what we mean when we say that we try and meet each child exactly where we find it, where they are right then and there.
You say children, which then means, it can be range everything from, hey, here's a newborn, which I don't think you're teaching to read just yet. Mind you, that'd be pretty cool if you
Yeah.
could, to maybe someone who's at age 18, 19. Is that kind of the spectrum of ages you're dealing with that you're helping become more literate?
Absolutely, Bernie. Our target ages are between preschool age, so your average 2 to 3 year old, going on until the end of high school, which for us is about 18. And so we work with groups within that vast age group. We work with set groups as their learning and academics develop.
So in that process then, because obviously a really young child, a toddler, is has different needs. How do you match, say, when someone is in the rural part of South Africa or rural part of inside Africa, such a small continent, said no one ever. How do you match things up so that this is something they should know? This is something they should know for like day to day operating activities, like so they're aware how things work. It could be as you're older, how to manage a motor or how to manage a pump. Just basics. It happens here in Canada too. At least I enjoyed it. It's called shop class for us. To where you are now talking about, let's say, math and higher learning because the person has an aptitude for that. Or maybe they want to be a songwriter and they just need to know how to bring the music together so it breathes and lives. How do you figure that out? How do you figure that stuff out? How to deliver the end product?
Ah. Love that you asked that question, Bernie. So you may remember, Bernie, you and I have been, chatting and meeting up for a coffee every now and again for the last, 4 years, I think. So
Yep.
the process really began about 5 years ago when I started my communications company. And for a long time, the YCoLab Youth Academy space fell under the same umbrella. And at the end of 2024, we registered them independently. So the Youth Academy became a non-profit, independent organization with basically the start of what we have been really pulling together over 5 years. And one of the things, for example, I'll share with you that I've been doing over 5 years for this space, knowing that we're going to step into this space, is building the kind of collaborations that I've been building over 5 years. So, example, networking with Canada, and finding people, yay, way, finding people that are equally passionate, that believe in the same path, that also work with kids perhaps and the education space. And actually building collaborative partnerships with people like that so that I can literally call on Bernie in Canada and say, I need a mentor for someone who is interested in X, Y, and Z because this is what you do, Bernie. And so I would like to introduce this young child to you and to be able to then walk a little path with them so they can experience this space that you've created for yourself, that they may be interested in or have shown an aptitude for, and try and match them up to their passions in that way, firstly, because I do believe that's really important in this bigger frame of everything we do. But then also be able to get access to people like the Bernies of the world who are prepared to mentor young kids, not even necessarily formally, but just occasionally meeting up and sharing a little bit of wisdom, that kind of thing. So that we've been building for 5 years in the background. And so what we have now is this space we've created for all of these kids to flock into. And we slowly but surely coming off the ground now. It's been a good few months of trying to pull everything together and get the engine started. But what we're looking at now is this space we created where we can welcome the kids in, offer their parents, their carers, and eventually their educators the same kind of support and the same kind of access to what we deliver to the children so that our kids get the same kind of support. But at the same time, we have this network of global people just available to us where we can say, this child would love to enter the music industry. Could I introduce them to them? And can we spend some time with you? Just figuring out how your world works, right? So that's the kind of mentorship that we've been working towards for 5 years. And I think it really gives us an edge in terms of being able to cater to all the different little personalities that come into our space.
So I have never been to Africa, so I can only gasp what I've read or seen. There's a very diverse group of communities in Africa, from hyper rural to cities to industrial to, tell me how you deliver services that fit where you're going when there's so many models that work and act differently.
Right. Thank you, Wayne, for that. And yes, you're correct. Very diverse demographics happening here. Many different languages. We've got 12 official languages. And so there are always challenges and barriers in place. However, what we have decided to do is literally start on our doorstep with the local rollout. So I myself am an English and Afrikaans speaker. So that's where I've started over the last few years. We are slowly now building a space or a team where we've got people of different language skills stepping into our space as well, right? To be able to assist with various demographics in terms of language. And then also what we've put in place now is investing in the kind of equipment and the kind of community platform for the Y Cola, where we do not necessarily need to be accessing Wi-Fi with our devices. We also have one app for which I will be the South African ambassador once we roll out on the program. It's a literacy app. And once it's downloaded onto your phone or device, you do not need internet access. The only time you might need it is if you're one of the teachers or one of the tutors and you want to connect to the mainframe to upload learner information and updates, etc., as they progress through the app. So it's basically built for Africa. And I'm very happy to say that we found ourselves a fantastic African focused education community that is currently being built, customized for us and tested for us, something I've been also involved with for about 3 or 4 years. And we've invested in that platform because we feel this is the space where our kids will really have the focus to thrive and be able to access all these different levels of what we want to bring to them. So it's a multi-pronged approach. Certainly, we are adding as we go along, and as we explore different areas, we're going to have to pivot and add a little more to the number of tendrils we have. But I think that's part of the fun of building the space.
When you're building out this program or how this program's running, how do you measure the success of the hi, here's some information, whether it's to be read, it's an engagement component. How do you measure the success that not so much did the person learn it, but it has to be adjusted to suit sometimes because not everybody quite learns the same way. Some people are hands-on, some are visual learners, some are auditory, and so forth. And if you run into a gifted person, what then? Like, and not that it's a bad thing, right? But if they're gifted,
Yeah.
right, then you need to accelerate more. There's more of a voracious appetite, right? They'll just
Right.
consume more. How do you get a sense of the ebb and flow of what's going on?
So first secret is always just to be on the ground as much as you can. So just really being in the thick of things. Second thing we do is we absolutely insist that the parents are involved, parent or parents, guardians in certain cases, but that their caregiving, key caregivers are involved because we feel that that support is really necessary for the child's development and for them to feel supported when they are not in our presence per se, but perhaps at home doing their daily reading, etc. So that's the second thing we do. We make sure that the adults are involved and also feeding us feedback, right? So we start with every learner that comes into our program for literacy, for example. We will do a baseline assessment with them and we will put out a report offering a plan around their development to their parent or guardian. And we use the current academic results, so the scoring on the school reports, to actually check if there's been any improvement on that level from term to term. Some things, obviously, like literacy, it's not something you can learn within 2 weeks or improve in 2 weeks and then, I'm literate now, off we go. Doesn't work that way. However, one of the biggest areas that we notice that kind of impact, especially in the literacy space, the confidence of the child. So suddenly the parent will go from sending us messages to say, yes, Wayne has read his 20 minutes today, and tomorrow we'll get the same message. Well done, Wayne. And 3 weeks later, we will hear from mom that Wayne has actually pulled his chair closer to my favorite sitting room chair and gone, right, today we're reading 2 chapters together, mom, instead of just 20 minutes. As regulated, we're doing 2 chapters today because this book's getting interesting, right? And one of the things I also like to do is to combine communication skills and verbal communication skills with their literacy, academic literacy. Ask them questions. I give them homework that makes them stand in front of a family member or a friend and speak about things and read to them. And those are the little places that we can see the difference and the impact and the change happening in the child, their personality, their confidence, their willingness to be in the space, right? So those little markers absolutely help. And of course, they keep us inspired too. That's a great question.
Megan, one thing that we ask a lot of our guests, delivery model. There's grants, there's subscribers, there's other agencies. Tell me how the delivery model, what resources you use to get the service in the streets.
Okay, so Wayne, first and foremost, because we've been operating online for about 3 years now, that was pretty straightforward, that we just used some marketing and online, very focused online marketing to get that kit off the ground. We did a few school-based programs and introductions from about 2 years ago. So we've actually gone into schools, introduced what we do, managed to speak to some parents who had challenges with their children in the learning space. And at this point in time, what we are doing, we are literally creating little pods, I would say, of information sessions where carers, caregivers, day to day, after caregivers, etc., parents and the students themselves, the learners themselves can tap into a space where we are available to actually walk them through some of the challenges. So we are targeting multiple organizations on a grassroots level who have an audience already, right? An audience of children within our target group. And if they have a gap in their presentation to the kids of what they can offer, we step in and we offer that to fill that gap for them. And so we are not only collaborating towards improving our reach, but the actual reach of the organization that we're supporting in that way. So we're using a very multi-level approach on most of what we do right now so that we can actually just 100% find our niche. As I say, we're under a year old at the moment as an independent organization. So we are very much testing our model at this stage.
Are there any plans to go into the workplace where people over the age of 18, not that they're not literate, but to improve what they understand? There's always, from an adult education point, I know for myself, and actually it's like it'd be having watched a tradesman do work around the house. Geez, I know I can do that. It would just look like a horrible mess if I did it. Hence, hence why I hired a person out in the first place. But sometimes it's understanding how things work and then to either do it or just it just provides a little bit of change in your knowledge base. Are you looking to go towards that in that market also? Include that as a long range plan?
Very well. In my for-profit business, the communications business, the facilitation for entrepreneurs is one thing that I've been doing for at least 3 or 4 years now as well. So yes, I myself personally do work in that space, and I still do. Some of my team members, my volunteering team members, do from the Youth Academy also are facilitators in their real-time jobs. We have the skill available, and I think that is the skill that's helping us build the Y collab space so well, because we have most of us, I think, have started in the online adult facilitation and training space, and now we've really focused in for the youth space and for the younger minds. We've focused in on literacy and key life skills to get them moving. And what I'm hoping to build, and this is where the longer term plan comes in, and well, I'm planning to build, is to get this little funnel where our young kids, our 2, 3-year-olds from preschool, are coming into the system, learning to read with us, learning to have fun with us, with after school activities, holiday programs, etc. Then to get them past that point where they are now set with their literacy and reading, they're comfortable academically, and we're still supporting and mentoring them, because now we're looking ahead from the teen space to the point where they are starting to decide on which subjects they have to take at school and thinking ahead for vocation and university and all of those things. So literally what we're building is that model that can be able to swing once the child hits that certain level and go, right, let's change our perspective now and look forward to the horizon of university, college, whatever it is you choose to do. And then to be able to swing it in that direction and hopefully keep them in our funnel. So from the Y Collab space into the Paradox Rock space, which is my communications company and the place that I do all my coaching, mentorship, facilitation with different organizations. And we do that globally as well. The ideal would be to keep them in that loop until they start mentoring in our space as well and become facilitators in the space, and just really draw them in, because they've now got inside information and experience as well as the external that they can bring to and help enhance the space for the kids. So that's the long-term plan.
Megan, various operators of various models. One of the things that I find people get confused by is nonprofits aren't charities and charities aren't really nonprofits. What have you learned in being a nonprofit that surprised you? What ditches can you keep others out of? And what's your take on a nonprofit organization?
Love it, Wayne. So definitely lots of learning curves going on. I think my learning curve is like vertical at the moment with just getting the non-profit off the ground and the compliance and the governance and all of that. Well, I certainly thought that I'd been running businesses for a few years, and so non-profit is like just the next step. Let's move it. Let's get going. But there's so much more to learn in that space. One thing I'm very glad for, it took me about a year to decide whether or not I was actually going to create a non-profit or not for this youth academy space. And I was really torn between the two options here. And eventually I opted for the non-profit for the reason that I convinced myself, like I did with my other business, to do a few impossible things. And that's something I'm known for. You might not know this about me. Bernie might have seen this a few times in the past, but I often get asked, Megan, can we just do one thing in the way that we actually wrote it down in the business plan, right? So can we just follow the model? Can we just concentrate on one thing at a time, perhaps? And it's like, no, 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 my brain doesn't work that way. The nice thing I think about being a visionary for your own space, building your own business, is the fact that we sometimes forget that we can create the rules, right? That govern what's happening there. And so I absolutely take the license with that, and I run with that fully. But the one thing that I came into this space once I decided about the nonprofit is that we will not be a charity. We will not be a charity. We will be creating our own income streams. We will be creating our own events for fundraising purposes. Yes, we will be applying for grants. We will be looking for funding with corporates, etc. However, that's not the only thing that we're going to do. So I came into this knowing that this was going to be run like a business. And yes, all those profits that will come into the business will just be churned and, used to further forward the nonprofit space. But I think the important thing that I'd like to share with people in that space that I've learned is that I think the times are long gone where we can just sit there and be the charity asking every passing stranger for a buck, right? We've got to do something about it. And I think we've got to be doing 90% of it ourselves, quite honestly.
So, what keeps you going? What's your motivation? I mean, there are going to be days that are you're riding the top of the wave, and there are other days it's like, oh my gosh, what was I thinking, right? What 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 puts the fire in the belly of the dragon for you?
Bernie, definitely, I am passion fueled. Once I get my teeth into something, it's really difficult to get me to let go or to stop. I'm one of those kind of people. So definitely determination and passion. And I think resilience goes along with that. However, the switch that you are able to witness in a child when you've gotten them over that threshold that they didn't think they could step over, it's magical. It's magical. And it doesn't only happen with children, right? If I have an entrepreneur come into my space and they're struggling to align their business, their passions, their purpose, or they don't know what it is, but they'd like to explore it and they don't know where to start, I walk that journey with them. And the best thing to be able to witness is just that light going on and the eyes lighting up and going, something's something's starting to connect. And I think that's what keeps driving me is that over the last 5 years in both businesses, I've just seen so many people's lights go on, for projects that I've been involved with, not necessarily our own, but I coach in other spaces as well. And I am really motivated by the fact that you can physically see the changes happening, the inspiration kicking in. And that certainly drives me.
I'm guessing there's a big overview where this organization is doing very well and I'm excited and proud. And then you meet a person who's taken what you've given and eaten it all and more. And it's very specific. It's not the organization, it's the person. Can you tell me about a transformation story that really moved you?
When one of my favorites, certainly, about 2 years ago, I had a final year school learner come into my space as a private student. And as we typically have in Africa, our kids grow up with multiple languages, right? And she particularly was from the Eastern Cape of South Africa, and she had grown up with her grandmother. So she was speaking isiXhosa, which is another South African language. She was speaking that from birth, right? And she got to move in with an aunt who also lived in the Eastern Cape somewhere, about 3 or 4 years later, and they spoke a different African language. So that was language number 2 for her. And then at the age of 5, the end of her 5th year, she was sent to Cape Town where her parents were working. She was sent to her parents and put in an English medium school, no previous experience with English. And typically Afrikaans in most schools, Afrikaans is our second language of medium in schools. And This girl came to me in her final year of school, and I can only imagine the struggle she's had every single year for 12 years, going through the schooling system with two languages that she'd never heard of until she stepped over that threshold, right? She just kept going. She didn't fail a single year, kept going. And of course, our final year matric is a big thing because that's your access to university, all of those kinds of things and further studies. And her parents thought this is the year to get her into some extra support spaces, and she came into my space. And the first thing that I identified is just the fact that everything else that she's struggling with is as a result of the fact that she's not literate enough in the English language to cope with her schooling. So what did we do? We just went on this intensive drive to get her reading every day. And we read using her school textbooks, her school poetry books. We read nothing else except her school textbooks. And through that, we taught her the sentence structures, what a verb is, what a noun is, how they get used, why they get used. Reading all of those things just gave her the background to the language that she actually needed to comprehend better. And she passed her matric first this time round, and she's actually studying and working in an IT space today. So she's still studying part-time at the moment, but she's managed to find herself employment. She is studying further, which she didn't expect to be able to do. And for me, that was just complete goosebumps. Complete goosebumps, because the tenacity of this young lady was just something to behold.
So now the magic wand moment. What would you hope for Y Collab in 3 to 5 years if the universe unfolds like you would like?
The plan is, Wayne, that we find ourselves to a point where we are building a brick and mortar space for our kids. And we are busy talking to someone about that at the moment, but obviously we've got a lot of building to do, a lot of prep to do in that space. But the ultimate idea is not only to create a learning academy that supports the academics, but a safe space, very importantly, safe space where they have recreation, where they have mentorship, where they have support through their development process. And so that is the long-term vision for the space. But then also that we further our collaborations with our overseas counterparts that we're working with at the moment, and create exchange programs with similar organizations overseas where our children actually have access to a plane ride, which most of them will never experience under, current circumstances. Being able to experience a different country, being able to just experience those things. So that's the long-term vision. We're all about holistic development in our space. And so, people might think, 2 weeks in a different country is not going to teach them much. However, the horizons are expanding, the curiosity is being tickled, and all of those good things are happening. Doesn't matter how short the trip is. So that's the route that we'd hope to see things panning out to be.
Megan, if someone
Yes.
wants to reach out and find you and get to know Megan, get to know the programs, here's another question in that, wrapped into that question. Are you looking for people to affiliate and branch with to help propagate the Y Collab space?
For sure, Bernie, that's a resounding yes, please. We are always on the lookout for collaborations. And you know what? Even if it isn't a clear collaboration in your mind right now, let's have a conversation. I love networking. I love having coffees with people. I love just meeting people and knowing that at any point in 5 years' time, I can reach out to Wayne and go, you mentioned this to me 5 years ago when we chatted, and I need to pick up that conversation, right? The fact that we are able to do that just means that we're expanding all the time. So we are very open to collaboration right now. Evermore, we will be collaborating because we just know that it's the better way to go, rather than trying to reinvent the wheel all the time, trying to just carry all the weight ourselves, etc. But yes, please reach out to me. We can be, for the moment, our websites are being built. Everything's happening in the background at the moment. Now that we are moving forward with our rollout on the ground, you can reach me either at Meg, that's MEG, at I-Collab, COLLAB.com, at the Youth Academy space, or you can reach me at meg@paradoxrocks.com. If you're an entrepreneur looking for mentorship, guidance, or perhaps some consultative support, please reach out. I'm also on LinkedIn. You can find. Typically, I'm the only Megan Diaz, so it's MEGAN for Delta, EERS, and that's where you can find me on LinkedIn. Please do reach out.
Megan Deers, thank you so much for being here today and sharing what you're doing this incredible work. Wayne Pratt, thank you for being the co-host. But more importantly, you, the Knack for Business listeners, if this is kind of sparked interest in you and you want to feel the need to help make the kids, the next generation, not just more literate, but more giving them the opportunity to enrich their minds and creativity, reach out to Megan. She's got a program, she's up and running, and she's looking for people to partner and affiliate with. And
to reach the podcast hosts, email them at info@creativeinsight.com or by the website creativeinsight.com, spelled KREATIVISIGHT.com. To reach Wayne at his email, wayne@motive8u.ca, that is MOTIVE, the numeral 8 and the letter u.ca, or his website, motive8u.ca. If you would like to be a guest on this podcast and share your knowledge, let us know. We would also appreciate your feedback on the content or format. Check the show notes for more details. For these podcasts, we like to acknowledge the support and thanks to the following people. Carl Richards from Podcast Solutions Made Simple, a renowned podcast expert. Fred Crouch, who is the Property Wizard podcaster, where Bernie is a co-host. Jovan Strika from At Hive, a co-working space that is more than just a space. Then Melanie Weber, Bernie's invaluable business partner, and Wayne Pratt from Motive8U Inc., who serves as both a coach and co-host of these podcasts. Disclaimer. Please note that the Knack for Business podcast episodes are meant solely for educational and general informational purposes. The information and opinions contained within are not intended to be professional advice on any subject matter. The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed by the participants are their own personal beliefs and do not represent the views of the podcast hosts or any affiliated organizations. It is important to note that this podcast is not a replacement for consulting with certified experts in your area who possess knowledge of your unique situation. The hosts of the podcast, along with any participants or affiliated groups, do not take responsibility for any actions taken or not taken based on the information presented in this episode. It is highly recommended that individuals seek guidance from their own personal advisors in fields such as accounting, law, or other pertinent areas prior to undertaking any actions or making decisions that may impact their financial, legal, or other aspects of life.